Thank you very much to everyone who came today, and especially you guys who have stuck around and survived to the end. I know it's been quite a long day, so I won't tax you too much in this little wrap-up. So obviously I'd like to start off by thanking the speakers today. I think it's been a really sort of varied number of presentations, and everyone's done a great job of presenting their various thoughts on the topic of microservices. This event was sponsored by Microsoft and Keep It Running, and organised by Open Credo and Oliver Bernard. So thank you to them as well for their efforts. So my name is Tristan McCarthy. I'm a lead consultant with Open Credo and also one of the organisers of the event. So I'm just going to quickly wrap up and just basically cover off the theme, what we're trying to get across with this event, and just sort of recap some of what I think are the important takeaways. So really what the theme we're going for is to go beyond the buzz of microservices. Obviously, a lot of people out there will tell you what they can do, and we'll give you the evangelized version of them. And what we've really tried to give you here is the more realistic version of people who've actually been on the ground doing the work themselves, and hopefully help you out with that. So one of the things that sort of drove us to this approach is the Gartner hype cycle, which I don't know if you've seen before. It's fairly commonly used. It's not very scientific, but it is fairly axiomatically accurate in that, it matches what people tend to see. We think that where microservices are right now is at the peak of inflated expectations. So there are some big companies out there who've been using it, they've been singing its praises. A lot of people are starting to learn about it and thinking, wow, this is amazing, it's going to solve all my problems. What that means for most people who are adopting it now is you're staring down into the trough of disillusionment, in this case, which means it's all going to go wrong, it's all downhill from here. So what we've tried to do today is try and level off this graph a little bit. So we've been a little bit pessimistic in places, and we've tried to flatten that peak a little. For those who were in the previous talk with Thomas, possibly a little bit too pessimistic, but that's okay. And at the same time, give you a little bit of real-world knowledge and show you how we did things to try and get you out that trough much quicker, more quickly to get towards the plateau of productivity. So hopefully that's what we'll take away, is a little bit less believing it's a silver bullet, and a little bit more realistic, and a chance to sort of see how it can help you in what you have to solve. Icebergs, they're great for this kind of thing, because what we're talking about is the tip of the iceberg, obviously. In terms of following the leader, early adopters are great for highlighting the ways you can use new technology like this. So we have companies like Netflix and Amazon who are well known for using microservices, and they're good at showing how this approach can be used to solve some problems. It's really important to remember that these companies have very different problems to most organizations, just because the way they're set up, the size of them, and the way in which they operate are very, very different. So it's important whenever you adopt microservices, or you think about adopting microservices, that you understand that you will have your problems which differ completely to everyone else's, and you need to be ready to address those. So just make sure that you are aware of that and are ready to find your own solutions. Some of that feeds back into what Daniel was saying in his sort of opening keynote, in the introduction to the event actually, which was organizational readiness, things like that. You have to be in a situation where your organization can find those solutions and has the flexibility almost to make mistakes in places as well and learn from them. One thing that's very common in the tech scene is that it's very easy to find out how someone did something. So people are often going to tell you how they solved, or how they implemented this technology or something like that. What's very hard to find in many cases is the why, the reasoning behind it. So not just what they did, but what were they trying to resolve with that? What was the point of doing it? So it's very important to always think about the why, not just the how. So even when you're reading a blog post, you should always look for the why. And if it's not there, I view it as a suspect piece of information, to be quite frank. Where to next? So, next steps from here, hopefully, for some of you, are to go away and take some of the lessons you've learned today, or take some of the things you've heard and try them out. But in order to do that, you need to keep a few things in mind. Firstly, take time to understand your position. So it goes back to the why, not just the how. You need to all understand what it is you're trying to achieve, what problems you're trying to solve. Otherwise, you're probably not going to be able to solve them, obviously. So take some time before you dive into microservices. Think about what it is you're trying to understand, what it is you're trying to do. Understand what it is that microservices can do and what they're intended to do, by looking at what other people have done, obviously. and try and marry the two up to make sure it's the right decision. Something that Nikki sort of mentioned in her speech, I believe, was microservices aren't the answer to every problem. Organizational readiness is something that I'm quite keen on personally. So it's very easy to do something in a silo, and microservices are no different. You know, you can go off and say, we're going to do this, but you need to have the support of the organization. You need to be ready to help you out with implementing this. Something that Daniel brought up earlier, again, it's just making sure the whole organization is feeding into a pipeline which makes sense for this kind of work. Other aspects of this are things like DevOps is a really good example. You need to have a good idea of how to do certain things before you get to the point of implementing microservices. So if you're not doing agile development, if you've not got a good CI pipeline in place, you're probably not in a position where you're going to be able to do microservices, or at least not get the most out of them, because you need that deployment maturity to get the most out of this. Fairly self-explanatory. If you're going to do microservices, you should really understand the principles. It's something that we covered quite a lot today, so I'm not going to dig into it now. But just, go away, do some reading, make sure you understand what you're doing before you try it. Consider the overheads. So a great example of an overhead is are the problems that you don't necessarily think about now because you've solved them. So Nikki and David both did talks today on security, and that's a great example of something that most organizations think they've solved in their monoliths or in whatever approach they're doing, but there's a whole new set of challenges when you do a microservices approach. So the overheads of this are not just the new stuff you have to learn, it's the old stuff that you have to relearn, and you've just got to keep that in mind. Plan from idea to implementation. This kind of goes back to DevOps and the CI pipeline. You can basically do an architecture diagram and say, I've done microservices. I've thought about my service boundaries. I know where they are. I've done a nice diagram with pretty pictures and lots of nice colors. No one can understand it, but it's fine. But you have to think about how it goes into production, everything that goes with it. You've got to think about deployment, monitoring, security, all those things that you need to think about up front and make sure you know what you're doing with those. Understand the tools is another really key one. So we, as consultants, tend to get quite a lot of customers come to us and say, we'd like to use tool X, help us implement it. And that is absolutely the wrong way around, right? That's the completely ridiculous way of approaching the problem. You need to understand, we're going back to understand what your position is, what you're trying to resolve. You need to look at the various tools that are out there, understand the various pros and cons. In some areas there'll be a no-brainer. Maybe there's a tool for security which is the one, which is just going to meet every use case, and that's fine. But in many spaces there are several competing tools which have slightly different advantages and disadvantages, and you need to know what they are in order to make a sensible decision. And finally, share the knowledge. So this is not just sharing what you've learned, but also learning from other people. So it's just making sure there's a community of knowledge around this. This is attending events like this. Obviously, I'm somewhat preaching to the choir here because you're all here. But attend events like this, go to meetups, read blog posts, just get involved and try and learn from other people. Don't go away and just learn it on your own because you'll probably be reinventing the wheel. On that front, just a few books that might be interesting. So Daniel mentioned earlier Building Microservices by Sam Newman. Another one that's good is Microservices by Eberhard Wolf. And so Adrian Cockcroft is another guy that Daniel Bryant really likes. And he does a lot of interesting talks on microservices, so he's a very prolific blogger and speaker. He's worth checking out. And a bit of a plug for Open Credo. We do talk about this a lot, as you probably noticed by us being here a lot today. So it's worth checking out our website. We have a number of blog posts and articles on this topic, which are worth checking out as an introduction as well. Right, so that's it for the sort of event wrap-up. I'd like to finish off by thanking our event organisers. So when I introduced myself earlier as one of the organisers, I was putting on some airs and graces a little bit, because I'm the organiser that said, we should do a conference. That'd be cool. And Danielle and Cameron, who I'm not sure if they're at the back, yes, they're at the back there, are the ones that actually made that a possibility by, yes, thank you. Thank you. So, thanks guys. They've worked incredibly hard with logistics to make all this work, so thanks very much to them. Couldn't happen without them. Well done. And also obviously thanks to the venue staff who've been great today. I think they've really made it run pretty smoothly. So thanks to them. I'm going to finish off about on time, which is not too bad, with social stuff. Reminds that we are running a social competition where we're giving away a Sonos Play 1, I think it's called, for the people who get the most social engagement using the OC Owl hashtag and our owls. You can certainly do yours as well. And we have another social aspect. Right, congratulations on your iPad win. Okay, so that one's finished. This one's still ongoing. We'll be announcing this at 6 o'clock. So if you are sticking around for drinks, grab an owl and do a tweet. Or if you're not interested in that, at least have a look at the other tweets and vote for the ones you'd like the best by just giving it a like or a retweet. And other than that, it's time for beers, which is... Oh, that's my microphone. So the beers are now, should be available in the bar outside. There's a tab running. There's beer and wine available for everyone. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope it's been useful to you all. Bye.